We all have strength enough to endure the misfortunes of others. Hypocrisy is the homage vice pays to virtue. True love is like ghosts, which everyone talks about and few have seen. It is more shameful to distrust our friends than to be deceived by them. We seldom attribute common sense except to those who agree with us. The height of cleverness is being able to conceal it. Everyone complains of his memory, and no one complains of his judgment. Gratitude is merely the secret hope of further favors. We seldom find people ungrateful as long as we are in a position to help them. To establish oneself in the world, one does all one can to appear established. It is not enough to have great qualities. We should also have the management of them. Perfect valor consists in doing without witnesses that which we would be capable of doing before everyone. The passions are the only orators who always persuade. We are more often treacherous through weakness than through a calculated design. The true way to be deceived is to think oneself more clever than others. Self-love is the greatest of all flatterers. The love of justice in most men is simply the fear of suffering injustice. The intellect is always fooled by the heart. We promise according to our hopes and perform according to our fears. A man is not unhappy until he believes himself to be so. We all have sufficient fortitude to bear the misfortunes of others. It is often merely for the sake of being opposed that we defend the opposite of what we believe. There are heroes in evil as well as in good. Absence diminishes small passions and increases great ones, as the wind extinguishes candles and fans fires. To know how to hide one's ability is great skill. We often forgive those who bore us, but we cannot forgive those whom we bore. If we had no faults, we should not take so much pleasure in noticing them in others. We do not lack strength, we lack will. He who lives without folly is not so wise as he thinks. It is easier to be wise for others than for oneself. Our virtues are often only vices in disguise. Jealousy lives upon doubts. It becomes madness or ceases entirely as soon as we pass from doubt to certainty. A refusal of praise is a desire to be praised twice. The defects of the soul are like wounds in the body. Whatever care we take to heal them, the scars still appear, and they are always in danger of opening again. It is easier to appear worthy of a position one does not hold than of the office one fills. We would rather speak ill of ourselves than not talk about ourselves at all. Few people know how to be old. We are more concerned about the reputation of those we wish to enter into a relationship with than we are of those we have already made an acquaintance. We would rather forgive an injury than an insult. We are always more afraid of those who fear us than of those whom we fear. The more we love our friends, the less we flatter them. The evil that we do does not attract to us so much persecution and hatred as our good qualities. We always like those who admire us, but we do not always like those whom we admire. What we call generosity is often nothing more than disguised ambition, which despises small interests in order to seek greater ones. Old age is a tyrant, which forbids, under pain of death, the pleasures of youth. If we are incapable of passion, we will never be able to rise above mediocrity. One should examine oneself for a very long time before thinking of condemning others. Virtue would not go so far if vanity did not keep it company. We forgive more easily the wrongs we have done to others than those we have done to ourselves. We are more willing to appear rude than to be bored. Quarrels would not last so long if the fault were only on one side. No one deserves to be praised for goodness unless they have the strength to be bad. We give nothing so liberally as advice. A person's worth is in the eyes of others. The more eyes there are to see, the more we are worth. The pleasure of love is in loving. We are happier in the passion we feel than in that which we inspire. We judge a person more by their questions than their answers. Good advice is something a man gives when he is too old to set a bad example. The surest way to be deceived is to think oneself cleverer than others. We confess small faults to insinuate that we have no large ones. It is a great sign of mediocrity to praise always moderately. The grace of novelty is an essential part of genius. Our virtues lose themselves in self-interest as rivers lose themselves in the sea. We are never so happy or unhappy as we imagine. It is easier to deceive oneself than to deceive others. The smallest fault of women who love is to love. Neither the sun nor death can be looked at steadily. There are few virtuous women who are not weary of their role. The greatest fault of all is to be conscious of none. If there is a single quality that is rare, it is goodness. We are never so ridiculous for the qualities we possess as for those we affect to have. The desire to seem clever often prevents us from being so. It is easier to appear worthy of a position one does not hold than to be worthy of the office one fills. The truest way to be deceived is to think oneself more knowing than others. Jealousy lives upon doubts, and it becomes madness or ceases entirely as soon as we pass from doubt to certainty. Friendship, like love, is destroyed by long absence, though it may be increased by short intermissions. Nothing is less sincere than the way people ask and give advice. It is more difficult to love without being loved than to be loved without loving. We often do good in order to do evil with impunity. The only vice which cannot be forgiven is hypocrisy. It is not enough to have great qualities. One should know how to manage them. The heart is forever making the head its fool. Our repentance is not so much regret for the ill we have done as fear of the ill that may happen to us. Jealousy is always born with love, but does not always die with it. The height of cleverness is to be able to conceal it. The pleasure of love is in loving, and we are happier in the passion we feel than in that which we inspire. Those who apply themselves too much to little things usually become incapable of great things. To establish oneself in the world, one must do all one can to appear established. It is easier to appear worthy of the position we do not have than to maintain that of which we are already in possession. Those who know their own minds know little of themselves. We always find the strength to bear the misfortunes of others. The only thing that should surprise us is that we are still capable of being surprised. Our enemies come nearer the truth in their judgment of us than we do ourselves. Virtue is often but ambition, and love but selfishness. It is easier to know men in general than to know one man in particular. Jealousy lives upon doubt. To succeed in the world, we must appear as though we succeed. The best way to keep your friends is not to give them any advice. Those who make the most noise are seldom the ones who accomplish the most. We are all more or less good actors. People are more concerned about their own feelings than those of others. Most people prefer to be deceived rather than face the truth. The passion for justice is often the mask of the passion for vengeance. The most sincere people often hide their feelings behind a mask. Self-deception is the most dangerous form of deceit. We seldom give credit to the kindness of our enemies. Jealousy is an honest act of love. People often see the faults of others without recognizing their own. It is better to be deceived than to live in suspicion. We would rather lose our friends than admit we were wrong.